David Chapin, President, Willmar Electric, back here with another video featuring, I had one with my dad. We talked about the purpose statement. In our office in Minnesota is what I call the Wall of Fame. And what we've done, and we did this in past offices, is we hung up pictures of the various different owners of Willmar Electric. And there's a story behind each one of these different people. While my dad was in the office here, I thought we would have him walk through and talk through and give a little brief history of Willmar Electric and the people that are on each and every one of these photos. So we're going to start off here with a guy that we all call Samuel Birch Chapin.
Samuel Birch Chapin, which is my grandfather, was a rail mail clerk, which as most people don't know, but that's sorting mail when the railroad used to have passenger trains going through about every town, and they'd sort mail on the train and drop it off, pick it up between towns. And in 1920, he thought he wanted something better than that, and so he took a correspondence course from the University of Minnesota, got his license from Minnesota, and started Willmar Electric back in 1920. Had a little bit of tough times during the Second World War because of things being rationed, and so there was a time in there off and on he worked in defense plants down in Omaha because he couldn't buy copper, for instance. And but the company was still alive, still there, and he came back to Willmar Electric after the war and kept it up. The next picture here is a picture of my father, Elmo Chapin, and Elmo joined after he came back from the war, was in the service, was in the Army, and in 1947, both he and my Uncle Frank were incorporated with my grandfather. So at that time, there was three of them as the owners of Willmar Electric. And they then worked primarily in the west central Minnesota area. And my father enjoyed people and enjoyed serving people. A lot of the work that they did back, in the early days, before the war probably, and then right after the war, was a lot of work with generating business in farms and communities that now have power running by in the street, the roads out there, but the farms never had electricity, and so that was a lot of their work years ago. It's called Rural Electrification Association, REA. So that was my father. There was 6 kids, and his family, or 5 siblings besides myself, and I was the only one that had much interest in Willmar Electric. Started working just around the shop, which was on the same property as Willmar Electric, even when I was young. Hung around my grandfather a lot. Not unlike a farm situation in which the farm is right there, and you work a lot with that. That was my introduction to Willmar Electric. My Uncle Frank Chapin, younger brother to my father, was in the Navy, and so after the war he came back. As I said, in 1947 they incorporated. Both my father and my uncle had different skills. Personality-wise, they both enjoyed people. They both enjoyed serving people, and in the community served in different ways. Both had been president of the Chamber of Commerce, but Frank was a volunteer fireman, and my father was involved in other aspects of the community as well. Frank had a great personality for telling jokes and interacting with people that way, and people really enjoyed Frank as well. And he kind of was more of the business end of Willmar Electric, where my dad was more of the operations end of Willmar Electric when the two of them were in business together. And then there's the 3 of us. I was the 3rd generation, as David said. And then I sold the business to David and Justin, just as my father and my uncle had sold the business years before to me. And David with a business degree and Justin with an engineering degree. And for 5 years after selling it to them, I was still working in Willmar Electric, and it started even before I sold to them, a gradual change in management and taking over by them. So it was not a hard decision for me to sell it, but also to move on. knowing that the people at Willmar Electric and the history of Willmar Electric was in good hands, the same as what my father, uncle, and my grandfather had really started in Willmar Electric.